Today, I'm bringing you the exclusive access to information documents that show how the Liberals immediately tried to politicize the renewed court challenges program. They even went so far as to try to use the Quebec City mosque shooting to push the need for their program. We haven't heard a lot about the Liberals breathing life back into the court challenges program over the last 2 years. Some of you might not even know what that program is or what it really does. What the program does is fund court challenges allegedly based on freedom of religion, freedom of democratic rights, language rights, and the right to liberty and security of person, or at least that's what the Liberals say the program is supposed to do. Now, this is from the website for the program. It reads, "The Department of Canadian Heritage, in collaboration with the Department of Justice, is reinstating and modernizing the Court Challenges Program, the CCP. The CCP will provide financial support to Canadians to bring cases of national significance related to constitutional and quasi-constitutional official language rights and human rights before the courts. The new CCP will be implemented and managed by the University of Ottawa, an organization independent of the government. Funding decisions will be made by 2 independent expert panels, one for language rights and one for human rights." Let's translate this. The government gives money to people who want to sue somebody else or something else for an alleged violation of their charter rights to cover legal costs and other court-related expenditures. Proponents of the program say it helps marginalized people defend their charter rights. Critics of this program, myself included, would say that this program picks winners and losers and chooses a side before the courts ever get a chance to weigh in and see who's actually legally right on the issue. And this program doesn't extend the same access to funding for people to defend themselves against accusations of violating someone else's charter rights. So it's patently unfair and ripe for political abuse. Now, this is the taxpayer-funded legal slush fund that, let's say, a busybody activist would use to force a Christian baker to bake a gay wedding cake. But the Christian baker, on the other hand, wouldn't have access to the same fund to defend themselves. If a suspected Islamic terrorist was detained and then he felt that he had been tortured and that his human rights had been violated because, let's say, maybe he was a little bit sleep deprived or something, this is the fund that suspected terrorist would have access to then sue us all. And really, in an age of crowdfunding and internet outrage mobs, these activists can certainly find enough people willing to help them with their legal bills that they shouldn't be expecting the government or Canadian taxpayers to do it for them. Now, when the Liberals resurrected this zombie, they funded it to the tune of $5 million annually starting in the 2016 budget. And I'm going to call this thing a chunk of zombie bureaucracy because it really is. It was scrapped for the first time by Brian Mulroney in 1992, and then it was brought back in 1994 by Jean Chrétien, and then Harper killed this horrible partisan welfare scheme again in 2006, and then the Liberals brought it back in 2016. It won't die. When the Liberals announced funding for this program, they assured us that it would be independent, or at least that's what they told the CBC. This is from the news story at the time. According to a department official who briefed reporters Tuesday, all funding decisions will be made by 2 independent bodies whose members will be selected through an open, transparent, and merit-based model that mirrors governor and council appointments. Oh, okay. You mean just like the independent senators who vote with the Liberals like all the time? Or the independent journalists panel that will decide who is a journalist and who will get some of that sweet, sweet government bailout money? The Court Challenges program allows Liberal appointees to decide who is worthy of funding to launch human rights complaints. I can see how this could easily be used to push a government agenda and attack some of the government's loudest critics. Can't you? And in these exclusive access to information documents we just received back, well, it proves just that. The government was trying to use this program to push their own political agenda. This legal slush fund, it was never meant to be independent, and we can see that right from the very beginning. As an aside, these documents took us 22 months to get our hands on. We applied for them 22 months ago, nearly 2 years. and the government asked for a brief extension 21 months ago. Like any access to information package, of course, there's a lot of back and forth and useless, fluffy information that you have to sort through in these nearly 400 pages to get to the good and relevant stuff. But we will post the document package in its entirety so that you can read it for yourself. Now, one of the first troubling things that I noticed was that the Justice Ministry officials, they didn't really have a clue what this new Court Challenges program would apply to. Here on page 100, the bureaucrats think it applies to family court and divorce proceedings for some reason. A couple of bureaucrats are going back and forth planning a tweet because that's what we pay government officials to do in this country, and one suggests this as the text. We've kept our promise to reinstate the Court Challenges program and protect children. The new Court Challenges program will go a long way towards helping families. Except the Court Challenges program is about charter rights and language rights, not divorce law, not family law. Further up in the email chain, some other bureaucrat, some wiser bureaucrat, tries to explain that families are probably going to be the least affected by this program. But these are the people in charge of the program. They don't even know what the thing applies to. We're off to a fantastic start, friends, aren't we? Then, on page 159 to 160, things get weird and political and frankly ghoulish. It looks like these bureaucrats are being ordered by the minister's office, that's Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould, to put together a question and answer document about how the Court Challenges program will deal with reasonable accommodation and freedom of religion in Quebec. And they specifically reference the Quebec City mosque shooting. Let's start here. It's 9:20 in the morning of January 30th, 2017. That's the morning after the Quebec City mosque attack. The first email reads, Joe and Shirley Ann, is there a Q&A drafted around the impact of expansion to Section 2 in Quebec with regards to reasonable accommodation and freedom of religion? Shirley Ann replies that she's going to check on this. Then Shirley Ann replies one more time. Given the shootings in Quebec, please advise as to what we have on this ASAP. We need to loop in the Deputy Minister's office and CC Kathy and Francois. Then one of the strategic communications advisors replies, Hi, Human Rights Law indicated that there isn't a Q&A on this that they are aware of. We have a general Q&A that addresses the question of what future types of cases can be brought. The proposed answer includes that we are not able to speculate on future cases and that it will be up to the independent expert panels to select cases for funding based on the eligibility criteria. Then a bureaucrat named Joe Demora replies, Can't go back to the minister's office effectively saying it isn't in the package. I think them asking means please ensure that Q&A is covered off specifically. The proposed question and answer they came up with is on pages 178 through to 180, where because of the Quebec shooting, they focus explicitly on freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. The day after the shooting, where 6 people were left dead in their place of worship, the Liberals were trying to capitalize on the unimaginable tragedy. This was really only a few hours after the shooting, 12, maybe 14 at the most. And just as information was coming out, the Liberals were already planning to politicize the shooting to push the need for the Court Challenges program, even though the Justice Department's own Human Rights Division pointed out that there was nothing about this sort of thing in the program whatsoever. But the bureaucrats were being ordered by the minister's office to come up with something, anything, anyway. It's just so gross and so cynical and so callous. The bodies were barely even cold. The so-called nonpartisan bureaucrats running the Court Challenges program were pressed by the minister's office to use a deadly shooting in a Quebec mosque to argue for the need for that program, even though their own advisors said it didn't apply. And not one single person on that email chain thought that any of this was vulgar and opportunistic. There was nobody on that email chain who thought to themselves, you know what, we're being gross right now. And the Liberals, they just love to talk about freedom of religion for certain religious minorities. But when they talk about freedom of religion, they certainly aren't talking about Christians, are they? Let's remember, this is the government that stripped Christian groups of jobs grant funding if they didn't sign an attestation to the Liberal Party's values around sexual minorities and abortion. Do you think for a minute any of those same Christian groups who want to now sue the government for discrimination will get access to any of the court challenge fund money? I don't either. This will just be a slush fund to persecute Christians, conservatives, churches, fraternal orders, and sororities. This is the cash the Liberals will use to outsource their hatred of free speech, free thought, and free association. And as we've seen in these documents, the Liberals will do any manner of shameless, opportunistic promotion to make sure that happens. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. At The Rebel, we tell the other side of the story. That's why these access to information investigations are so important. And it's also why I'm going to the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Poland in December, despite the fact that the Liberals have called on the United Nations to ban me, and the United Nations has complied. I'm going anyway. If you can help cover the cost of our trip there and to support our independent journalism, you can go to therebelun.com.